1914, war breaks out. The cavalry have been used incredibly well during the Boer War and to great effect, so it was thought that horses would continue to be used during the First World War. However, there were only 23,000 horses, or thereabouts, as war broke out, already ready to go and work in the army, and they needed much, much greater numbers than that. Horses were going to need to be used by officers, which is probably something that Captain Perron would have done here. He's the right kind of breed and size and temperament. Not many horses would stand here in a tent, so he's a very good, suitable horse for that. Heavy horses were used to pull guns and supplies, and donkeys and ponies would also be used to carry loads and all sorts of bits and pieces of equipment. But as I've said, due to the popularity and development of the motor car and the bicycle, there weren't enough horses around, and there certainly weren't enough horses already in the army, so they started to go and look for them. A London bus company called Tillings was closing its horse section. They were changing their buses into horseless carriages, and suddenly they had all these horses around the place. So they decided that they would sell off their horses to the army, and they were already of the perfect temperament because they were used to carrying and pulling heavy equipment. So that was where some of the horses came from. Others were shipped in from all over the world: Argentina, Spain, Canada, Australia and Ireland. Now, some of these horses were beautifully schooled and trained, like this fella here. Some of them had never seen a saddle or a bridle or a rider in their lives, and they were going to need training up. The third place where horses came from was requisitioning. By that I mean being taken for use by the army. This is an original copy of a picture of a marketplace somewhere in England, where the farmers would bring their horses, the hunt yards would bring their horses, breeders. They would either sell them to the army or they would be taken by the army. Of course, I'm hoping some of you here have read War Horse, so you're going to be fairly familiar with the process of Joey, the guy, Albert's father, takes his horse Joey away and he sells him. That's something he regrets for the rest of the book. So this is a typical image of some village in the United Kingdom where the horses have been requisitioned. Now, perhaps the hardest thing to contemplate is family pets being requisitioned. People who love their horses, their ponies, and they would take them out riding and they love them very much, would be taken. But one family thought, we're not going to have this. And I found a letter that was written to Lord Kitchener. I found this letter in a book called Animals in War by Juliet Gardner, and I'd just like to read it to you. It's from a family of little children. Dear Lord Kitchener, we're writing for our pony, which we are very afraid may be taken for your army. Please spare her. Daddy says she's going to be a mother early next year, and she's 17 years old. It would break our hearts to let her go. We've given 2 others, and 3 of our family are fighting for you in the Navy. Mother and I will do anything for you, but please let us keep old Betty and send official word quickly before anybody comes. Now, they were very, very lucky in that Lord Kitchener was so moved by the letter that not only did he say he wouldn't be taking old Betty, he sent a certificate that the family could keep with them, and when the army came round to requisition horses, they had Lord Kitchener's word that Betty could stay at home. This wasn't the case for 53,000 other horses who by late August 1914 were on the Western Front. So, can I just go to the next image? Going to prompt me along the way. So going back to my research just for a moment, this is what I use essentially to start researching this piece. I've only been talking about Remount for about 3 weeks, so do excuse me. The Animals in War by Gilly Cooper, who of course is responsible for the Animals of War War Memorial at Hyde Park, which I'll come to later. The Animals of War, which accompanied an exhibition at the Imperial War Museum. Of course, War Horse. I went to see the play last year, pulled my eyes out for a whole 2 hours. And then the Women in War collection at the Imperial War Museum. And the British Armed Forces were actually, that website was responsible for this, which is a fantastic piece of kit I've got here. It's an original moulded badge of the Remount section. So when people are asking me today if I'm Women's Land Army, I can say actually no, although I look very similar to that, it is Remount. So the next slide. You put it up on the screen. So to write the actual script, I was very fortunate to find some newspaper articles within the Women in War archive. You can't see this terribly well. If you come up later, I've got copies of it as well. You can see the type of kit that they're wearing, which is how I based what Sian and I are wearing today of this. And you can also see the jolly japes that the gals got up to on the Remount yards. Once the horses were army, they had to be trained, just like the human conscripts, and I have a conscript over here as well. It's a lovely illustrated talk. They had to be trained up for the work. They had to get used to carrying weapons, such as the short magazine Lee Enfield there, nicknamed the Smelly. If you've heard my talk already, you've heard the joke, but the only thing that didn't smell in the trenches was probably that gun. They had to get used to doing drill. So Peron here would find himself in quite a close rank with horses on either side of him. The men would ride shoulder to shoulder. They've got all this equipment on their backs that they've got to get used to, and maybe I'll come to talk about that in just a moment. And they had to get used to unexpected noises. They should have come to the Festival of History, quite frankly, because there's guns going off every few minutes that I'm not expecting. So they had to get used to all of that. To train them, the Army Remount section set up yards all over the country. They acted as a collecting depot for the horses and also for the equipment. And at these yards, the horses were divided into 4 categories. We've got R1 for officers and cavalry horses, R2 are horses, smaller horses suitable for riding, HD is heavy draft, and LD is light draft horses for use on the front. So the depots were set up. They were mainly set up on old hunt yards originally, and the depot managers were perhaps the master of the hunt, but perhaps he might have to go away to war. And of course, a lot of the hunt staff would be suitable for the cavalry. So who on earth is there left to train these horses? Well, they went into the local villages and tried to recruit the men that were left. They were rather elderly and unfit, and some of them had never seen a horse in their lives, so they weren't very suitable. And what about all these women, though? These expert horsewomen who had ridden with the hunt for year upon year, suddenly were called upon to do war work. They were brought in to train the horses. The problem with these women is they were very, very upper class, most of them anyway. Now, they were excellent riders, but their grooms would groom their horses for them. They wouldn't go anywhere near them. They would get up, they would go hunting, they would jump off and shove it off at the groom, and he would deal with it. So suddenly, the girls had to learn to groom their own horses, to muck them out, to tack them up, and all that kind of thing. But they learned very, very quickly, so that was a good thing. So that was a brief explanation of what the Remount yard was. They're set up all over the country. I have a list here. When I say all over the country, we're looking at, they were called the Northern Command, Southern Command, Western Command, Eastern Command, Aldershot Command, Irish Command, and Scottish Command. And there were about 10 of each under all of those. So the nearest to my hometown would be the one in Ripon, up in Yorkshire. But they were spread all over the place. And if you'd like to look and see if there's a Remount yard in your neighbourhood, then come and look at this later. So that's the kit. You can see the girls are carrying hay at the top there. They're learning to drive. They're cleaning off the horses, which I'll come back to, and obviously riding as well. Can I go to the next one? If you come and hear my talk, I'm not going to let you read that. That's why it's blurred, because that is most of my talk. It was taken from a newspaper article written by a simply spiffing young girl whose boss was simply a topper. So that's where my accent comes from. So this is a newspaper article, which has been incredibly helpful, held at the Imperial War Museum archive. Okay, can I go to the next? Okay, I'll come to the images in just a moment. So the Remount yards, employed and were run by women. As I've said, because so many men were away at work, the women came in to help out. The article I've just shown you describes the boss of the yard. She is enthusiastic and efficient. She is a type of woman who can do anything with any kind of a horse. She is a born commander, they say, 1 in 1,000, which is a rare occurrence in a woman, and very few women can command such unwavering confidence in their women, and every girl on the yard loved to work for her. They say she was a type of woman who could do anything. She was very, very well organised, everything from the tons of hay, feed and bedding needed in the stables, right the way down to the yard cat getting its saucer of milk of an evening. The yard owner in my particular talk from that article was supposed to be fantastic with horses. There was one horse that the girl in the article describes. She says he was a big black brute, nicknamed the war horse or the slaughter. He would kick, he would bite, he would lash out with his forelegs. He seemed to be made of Indian rubber, and he struck down with his hooves, one time too often, within an inch of my face. So she storms out of the stable, saying she's never going to go near this horse again, at which point the boss comes in. She's brandishing a whip, and she only shows it to the horse. She says something in his ears, after which the horse is as good as gold for the rest of his army career. You have to their bosses, and they worked very hard on the yards. The yard routine was exceptionally tough. Does anybody here work with horses? It sounds fairly similar to what people do today, but very long days. Morning yard would start at 5 o'clock in the morning. The girls would then take breakfast at 6, having thoroughly mucked out all of the horses, rubbed them down, fed and watered them. They would then ride out in the mornings, up to 5 horses each. They would have to exercise before lunch and midday stables. The afternoons, they would teach the horses various skills. Cavalry horses had to know how to jump, and a lot of horses had to be trained to do that. I can't believe how good he is with all this gunfire. He really is a perfect cavalry horse. They would also have to clip the horses out and do various bits of sort of housekeeping around the yard. Afternoon teas at 4:30, and the horses are then stabled again at 5. They then clean all the tack. Look at all the tack on that horse. You've got that much for 5 horses, and then you can go and have your dinner, be in bed by about 8:30, 9 o'clock. No social life, no friends, and ready to start the whole thing again the next morning. Now, talking about riding, Sian, standing next to me, is an expert side saddle rider, so she's going to disagree probably with what I'm going to say, but this is what the women said. Some of them rode their horses astride. This saddle is designed for riding astride. You've got one leg either side of the horse, you've got good contact with both legs, and you can pretty much do anything. But a lot of the women didn't approve of riding astride. It's a little bit avant-garde, and they wanted to continue in the old vein of side saddle. One girl had been on a yard for 3.5 years. She trained 450 horses, every single one of them to go side saddle. Now, she said she did this to prove you didn't need to ride astride, and she also believed that women lost power when they were riding astride.